Chapter 1390. Lu Ming, you're really lucky to be able to escape. However, this place is extremely far from the ruins of deity. Let's see how you're going to escape. The man from the heavenly divinity sect stared at Lu Ming. His eyes were filled with malevolent and cold killing intent. You didn't return to the Yuan continent. Lu Ming frowned as he concentrated. The man was right. This place was too far away from the ruins of deity. Even if he used the bubble to open a space-time tunnel, he wouldn't be able to escape the man's pursuit. He would be hunted down and killed before he could reach the ruins of deity. Lu Ming was in danger. It's all because of you. The man from the heavenly divinity sect seemed to have been stabbed by Lu Ming's question. He roared and said malevolently, "It's all because of you. I'm cursed and my cultivation has dropped. If I take the teleportation formation in this state, the void will tremble, and the curse will go deeper into my bones. It will be difficult to get rid of it. How can I be satisfied if I don't kill you?" The man from the heavenly divinity sect became angrier as he spoke. His killing intent became colder. Lu Ming understood that the man must have been injured by the headless true dragon rider in the core of the ruins of deity, and was cursed. The headless true dragon rider wasn't a living being. It was formed by the undying battle intent of an unparalleled expert. Every move of the headless true dragon rider contained the power of the curse that would continuously corrode one's body and soul. The man from the heavenly divinity sect was cursed, and that was why he hadn't returned to the Yuan continent. It seems like you're also the one who spread the news about me having the chaos token. Lu Ming's eyes moved and he suddenly spoke. He had always felt that this matter was strange. If the people from the Southern Divine Palace had searched Long Chen's soul and found out that he had the chaos token, they must have secretly sent experts to capture him. Why would the news spread like wildfire? Now that he saw the man from the heavenly divinity sect, Lu Ming suddenly thought of a possibility. It was highly possible that the man from the heavenly divinity sect was the one who spread the news. He wanted to use others to kill Lu Ming. "Haha, that's right, it's me." The heavenly divinity sect's burly man laughed heartily. He took a step forward and crossed 100 miles. He rapidly approached Lu Ming. Lu Ming hurriedly retreated as he tried to think of a countermeasure. The destruction of Dragon God Valley is also fake. Lu Ming continued. If the Celestial God sect wanted to borrow someone else's hand to get rid of Lu Ming, they would first have to make sure that Lu Ming's identity wasn't a deterrent. Ji Hongchen said that the Heavenly God sect had sent news that the Dragon God Valley had been destroyed. It was very likely that this Heavenly God sect man had told him that. In the end, it formed space swords and slashed toward the burly man from the Heavenly Divinity sect. The burly man from the Heavenly Divinity sect was shocked and did not dare to be careless. He changed the direction of his sword and slashed out horizontally. Clang! 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 9 space swords were slashed apart by the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect. At this moment, Dandan also made his move. Just like Bubble, Dandan's body emitted a blood-red light, causing its aura to increase by a notch. Lu Ming knew that Dandan and Bubble were going all out. They had burned their essence blood to increase their strength in a short period of time, but the aftereffects were not small. Dandan's body became bigger than a mountain. Its 2 front claws slapped toward the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect. In the process of slapping, Dandan's claws were covered with inscriptions, forming a terrifying killing array that suppressed the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect. Clang! 2 extremely sharp sword rays flew out from the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect and slashed at Dandan's claws. The array on Dandan's claws trembled and collapsed. Dandan's body flew out. However, at the same time, a transparent bubble suddenly appeared around the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect and enveloped him. "Good chance!" Dandan shouted. It opened its mouth and a ball of chaotic fog blasted toward the burly man from the heavenly divinity sect. The chaotic fog was like a world. Mountains and rivers could be vaguely seen. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as Dandan's attack was about to land, the transparent bubble burst out with tens of thousands of sword lights, destroying the bubble in one fell swoop. The sword lights slashed at the illusory world that Dandan had spat out. Puff! The world that Dandan had spat out shook violently and finally dissipated. Nestle kill! Chapter 1391. Danden's strength had increased tremendously after burning his blood essence, allowing him to unleash terrifying attacks. Bubble was the same. Its entire body glowed with dazzling blood-red light as it chirped. Wherever it stood, the space around it rippled like water, as if it were the ruler of this world. It was capable of unleashing terrifying killing techniques. However, the strength of the man from the heavenly divinity sect was terrifying. He fought against Danden and Bubble. What a strong combat strength. Something is wrong with this combat strength. Lu Ming wore a stern expression. The strength of the man from the heavenly divinity sect was beyond his imagination. The cultivation of the burly man from the celestial god sect was equivalent to a 6th-level martial emperor. However, his combat strength was beyond Lu Ming's expectations. It was not the 6th-level martial emperor that Lu Ming had imagined. Instead, it was much higher. Lu Ming had killed more than one 4th-level martial emperor martial artist in the continent of divine ruins. Hence, he was very clear about the combat abilities of these 4th-level martial emperors. Although the 4th-layer martial royal realm cultivators in the godly ruins continent were strong, there was a limit to their strength. Based on their strength, he could roughly estimate that they were 6th-layer martial royal realm cultivators. However, the man from the heavenly divinity sect was much stronger than what Lu Ming had estimated. Could it be that the martial royal realm cultivators in the Yuanlu continent are much stronger than the martial royal realm cultivators in the godly ruins continent? Or is the man from the heavenly divinity sect a combat genius? Or maybe it's because his cultivation is higher. Lu Ming guessed. Then, Lu Ming's figure moved and appeared beside his second body. Lu Ming frowned as he sensed his condition. His second body was seriously injured. Half of his body had exploded, and only half of his body was left. Fortunately, the soul that Lu Ming had split out from his second body was not seriously injured. Otherwise, his second body would have perished. However, the situation was not optimistic. The second body would need a long time to recover. During this time, the second body would not be able to help Lu Ming. He waved his hand and put his second body into the mountain and river diagram. Then, he condensed his true energy into a ribbon and collected the storage rings of the martial emperors. Boom! 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 The battle between Danden, Bubble, and the burly man from the heavenly god sect had reached its climax. If you're cursing me, I'll fight you to the death. Danden made a big fuss in the air. It jumped left and right, and various kinds of attacks emerged one after another. Inscription Dao, martial Dao. Everything was available. As for the space-time spiritual mouse, it was much simpler. It used the space-time domain to fight against the enemy. However, its power was extremely terrifying. The big man from the heavenly divine sect was extremely afraid of Bubble's space-time domain. If he wasn't careful, he would be frozen by the space-time domain. It had to be said that Danden and Bubbles were indeed powerful. They had just broken through to the Emperor realm not long ago. But the two of them were able to fight against the burly man from the celestial divinity sect by working together. One could only imagine how terrifying they would be when they were at their peak. Soon, the two sides had exchanged over 100 moves. Ha ha, it's finally done. At this moment, Danden suddenly laughed. His figure suddenly retreated, and around the burly man from the celestial god sect, dense inscriptions suddenly appeared. It was a great array. Previously, Danden was making a big fuss and jumping left and right. It turned out that he was secretly setting up an array. Now the array was finally completed. Buzz! The array shone, and 9 huge tortoise shells appeared in the sky. The tortoise shells shone brightly, suppressing the burly man from the celestial divinity sect in all directions. Break for me! The burly man from the celestial divinity sect shouted. He slashed out with his sword and slashed at one of the tortoise shells. However, the tortoise shell only trembled, and it didn't break. Little guy, do it! Go all out! Danden shouted. It opened its mouth and spat out a ball of chaotic light. Within the chaos, a world was formed. This time, the world that Danden spat out was extremely realistic. The inscriptions within intertwined, forming all kinds of living beings that suppressed the burly man from the celestial divinity sect. Chirp, chirp! Bubble cried out and waved its claws. Suddenly, a transparent bubble appeared around the burly man from the celestial divinity sect, enveloping him within. This bubble was obviously different from the transparent bubbles that appeared before. On top of this transparent bubble, there was a space-time spiritual mouse that was circling around and roaring at the sky. Break! 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 The burly man from the celestial divinity sect seemed to have sensed danger. He roared crazily and his sword chi exploded, trying to break the tortoise-shell shield. Kacha! Kacha! A crack appeared on one of the tortoise shells, and then it exploded. Explode! Explode for me! Explode for me! Dandan roared. Boom! Boom! The world that Dandan spat out suddenly exploded. At the same time, Bubble's transparent bubble also exploded. The terrifying energy annihilated that area, turning it into a pitch-black mass. The terrifying destructive storm exploded in all directions. That area was like a black hole. Dandan and Bubble's bodies were blown far away by the destructive storm. Lu Ming quickly rushed out and caught Dandan and Bubble. At this moment, Dandan and Bubble's aura was extremely weak and their bodies were dim. Chirp chirp, Bubble cried out weakly. Its body curled up and it actually fainted. Bubble! Lu Ming felt a pain in his heart. Lu Ming, Xiao Budian and I have suffered great losses after burning our blood essence. I'm afraid we have to sleep for a while. When we wake up, you have to prepare a lot of spiritual herbs, Dandan said and fainted. Don't worry, Lu Ming whispered, and put Dandan and Bubble into the mountain river diagram. Boom! The explosion continued, and it took a while before it calmed down. A figure appeared in the sky. The burly man from the celestial divinity sect was still alive. But at this moment, he was extremely miserable. His body was tattered and wounds big and small covered his body. Blood flowed out continuously. His aura was extremely weak, and there was a layer of true yuan covering his body, allowing him to stand in the air. Ah, damn it, damn it! The burly man from the celestial divinity sect roared. He was too miserable. He had already been struck by the headless true dragon knight's curse, and his cultivation had regressed. It was difficult for him to recover even after such a long time. Just now, he had been heavily injured by Dandan and Bubble's joint attack. His injuries had worsened, and even if he recovered in the future, his cultivation would most likely regress, and he would never be able to improve it again. His anger seemed to be able to burn half the sky. Kill! Before he could react, a cold murderous intent shrouded him. Lu Ming charged over. The embryonic form of the chaos domain wrapped around the dragon vein sword and slashed toward him. Clang! The burly man from the celestial divinity sect raised his long sword and blocked in front of him. The dragon vein sword struck his long sword, causing his body to shake violently. His body flew out like a cannonball and blood spurted out of his mouth. He was no match for Lu Ming now. Kill! Lu Ming shouted and charged towards the burly man. Lu Ming, I'll spare your life today. The burly man from the celestial divinity sect roared and turned to run. Where do you think you're going? Lu Ming used the wind yuan technique and chased after the burly man from the celestial divinity sect. Chapter 1392. The two of them disappeared from this place. However, it was impossible for the man from heavenly divine sect to shake off Lu Ming. Moreover, as time passed, the distance between Lu Ming and the man from heavenly divine sect was getting closer and closer. After all, the man from heavenly divine sect was severely injured, and he was running for his life. As his injuries worsened, his speed became slower and slower. This won't do. If this continues, this brat will catch up to me sooner or later. Now that I'm severely injured, I'm no match for him. The man from heavenly divine sect thought of a way to escape. Behind him, Lu Ming's eyes were cold. His body was enveloped in a green radiance as he chased after the man from heavenly divine sect. He must kill the man from heavenly divine sect. The man from heavenly divine sect was the reason why he was being chased by all the experts from heavenly divine sect. First, they spread the news that Lu Ming had the primordial chaos token and could enter the core of the ruins of God safely. Then, they spread the false news that the Dragon God Valley had been annihilated. This made the powerhouses in the mainland of the ruins of God have no scruples about Lu Ming and go all out to hunt him down. Later on, When Lu Ming plotted to kill a large number of powerful cultivators from the continent of God, the burly man from the celestial divine sect launched a sneak attack and severely injured his second body. Now even Dandan and Bubbles had fallen into a coma. Lu Ming had suffered a great loss. Moreover, the man from Heavenly Divine Sect would definitely take revenge on Lu Ming in the future if he didn't kill him. His family and friends in Divine Wilderness Continent would be in danger. Therefore, Lu Ming had to kill the man from Heavenly Divine Sect at all costs to prevent future troubles. The distance between the two of them was getting closer and closer. No, this can't go on. I can only give it a try. The man from Heavenly Divine Sect had a ruthless look in his eyes. He suddenly changed his direction and flew towards the east. That's the direction of the ancient city of Heavenly Divine Ruins. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. The location he had chosen was in the central region of Heavenly Divine Ruins. It wasn't far from the ancient city of Heavenly Divine Ruins, so that he could wait for the experts from the 4 divine palaces to appear. Is he trying to use the ancient city of Heavenly Divine Ruins teleportation formation to escape back to Heavenly Divine Sect? Lu Ming guessed. That was indeed the case. The burly man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect no longer cared about his injuries. He wanted to use the teleportation array to escape back to the Heavenly Divinity Sect. As long as he returned to the Heavenly Divinity Sect, he would be safe. In the future, when he recovered from his injuries, he would definitely return to the Divine Ruins continent and kill all of Lu Ming's friends and family, completely destroying the Divine Wilderness continent. A cold light flashed across the Heavenly God Sect's burly man's eyes. I won't let you have your way. Lu Ming's gaze was resolute. More energy poured into the wind-suppressing pearl. Lu Ming used the wind origin art to its peak, increasing his speed. The distance between him and the Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was shrinking. Quick, quick! The burly man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect roared in his heart as he tried his best to escape. Soon a huge ancient city appeared in front of them. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them, one in front and one behind, rushed into the ancient city of gods. What's that? What a powerful fluctuation! That's a sovereign. So powerful. Who is it? In the ancient city of the ruins of God, some experts were alarmed and looked at the sky in shock. In front of them, the 36 Big Dipper Mountains were in sight. We're here. We're almost there. The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man's eyes shone with hope. Strength, come to me. At this moment Lu Ming roared. An even stronger energy poured into Lu Ming's body from the wind-suppressing pearl. Lu Ming's body trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The wind-suppressing pearl contained a lot of energy. Too much energy poured into it, and Lu Ming could not withstand it at all. He was injured by the energy, but because of this, Lu Ming's speed increased greatly. He suddenly sped up and closed in on the Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man. Whoosh! The dragon vein sword slashed at the Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man. Not good. The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was shocked, and quickly turned around to block with his sword. Clang! The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was sent flying, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Suppress! The prison-suppressing monument bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head. Lu Ming turned into the prison-suppressing monument and suppressed the Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man. Boom! The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was hit by the prison-suppressing monument. His body was like a meteorite as he slammed heavily onto the ground. A Tiangang peak exploded, and his body almost split apart. Prison-suppressing monument. Why do you also have the prison-suppressing monument? Is this a bloodline? No, it's a fragment of the prison-suppressing monument. The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man struggled to get up. He looked at Lu Ming's prison-suppressing monument bloodline and shouted in disbelief. Boom! Lu Ming could not be bothered with him, and the prison-suppressing monument pressed down again. This time, the Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was almost killed. The Heavenly Divinity Sect's large man was extremely weak. The long sword in his hand flew out, and he no longer had the strength to resist. Chapter 1393. Then Lu Ming looked at the other two altars. Divine Dragon Valley and Heavenly Universe Demon Sect. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. On one of the altars was the middle-aged man from Divine Dragon Valley, who had come to the Divine Ruins mainland previously. Behind him was a young man. On the third altar, there were two middle-aged experts from Heavenly Universe Demon Sect. Deacon, save me. This Lu Ming wants to kill me." When he saw the white-haired old man from Heavenly God Sect, he was overjoyed and shouted crazily, as if he had found his savior. As soon as the burly man from the Celestial God Sect shouted, the people from several parties looked toward Lu Ming and the rest. "What? Lu Ming, how dare you?" The white-haired old man from Heavenly God Sect reacted and shouted, "Kill!" At the same time, the suppressing prison steel shook and pressed down on the man from Heavenly God Sect. There was no time to lose. The arrival of Yuanlu's sect was out of Lu Ming's expectation. However, he had to kill the man from Heavenly God Sect. Therefore, Lu Ming took action immediately. Decisive and decisive. "No, you!" The man from Heavenly God Sect screamed. The burly man from the Celestial God Sect screamed in despair. He did not expect Lu Ming to have the guts to attack him, after seeing the white-haired elder from the Celestial God Sect. Boom! The suppressing prison steel continued to press down on the man from Heavenly God Sect. The man from Heavenly God Sect was torn apart, and his body and soul were destroyed. "How dare you? You are courting death." There was a cold roar in the sky. The white-haired elder of the Celestial God Sect exuded an extremely terrifying aura. The aura was so strong that it was far stronger than the burly man from before. Lu Ming was like an ant in front of him. Bang! Under the pressure, Lu Ming could not maintain the suppressing prison steel form, and it collapsed. Lu Ming's original body appeared. His face was pale, and he almost vomited blood. "What are you trying to do? Do you think the disciples of Divine Dragon Valley are easy to bully?" Scram! Just as Lu Ming was about to collapse, a loud shout was heard. It was the burly man from Divine Dragon Valley. An aura that was not weaker than that of the white-haired elder erupted and blocked the white-haired elder's aura. Only then did Lu Ming feel the pressure on his body disappear. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. His heart was very heavy. Strong, too strong. Whether it was the white-haired old man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect, or the middle-aged man from the Dragon God Valley, they were all too strong. They had far surpassed Lu Ming. Lu Ming seemed to be very strong in the Continent of God group. However, compared to the experts in Yuan Continent, he was much weaker. He felt that the white-haired old man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect and the middle-aged man from the Dragon God Valley could easily kill him. "You want to stop me?" Lu Ming believed that even if he were to use the chaotic flipping heavenly seal, he still wouldn't be able to defeat his opponent. His opponent's strength was too powerful. Could it be that he was a genius of the Heavenly Divinity Sect? Lu Ming began to make guesses in his heart. "Interesting, you're able to resist my second blow. What about my third blow?" The young man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect felt embarrassed after failing to kill Lu Ming with 2 consecutive blows. His expression turned cold. His aura grew stronger. "Stop putting on an act here. Fight me if you have the ability." At that moment, a burly young man suddenly appeared behind the young man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect and attacked him. The young man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect turned pale. He couldn't be bothered to deal with Lu Ming. He turned around and fought with the burly young man. The burly young man was the one who had come with the burly young man from the Divine Dragon Valley. The two of them fought, and it was hard to tell who would win. How powerful! There was a look of shock in Lu Ming's eyes. The burly young man from the Divine Dragon Valley had a similar cultivation as the young man from the Heavenly Divinity Sect. They were both early LV2 Martial Royal Realm. However, their combat strength was extraordinary. Lu Ming felt that some of the weaker LV4 Martial Royal Realm cultivators in the Godly Ruins continent were no match for the two of them. Yuanlu is indeed not simple, Lu Ming exclaimed in his heart. His eyes were filled with anticipation. There was no doubt that Yuanlu was filled with experts, and the Godly Ruins continent couldn't be compared to them. Lu Ming was filled with anticipation. Lu Ming knew that the Heavenly Divinity Sect might have a fragment of the suppressing prison monument. This made Lu Ming even more excited. He had a feeling that if he could gather all the fragments of the suppressing prison monument, the bloodline of the suppressing prison monument would undergo a shocking change. Chapter 1394. Everyone in the ancient city of the divine ruins was alarmed. Some of them ran away, while others ran towards Lu Ming. When they sensed the fluctuations of the battle, they retreated frantically. At this moment, Xian Yinqing appeared with a thought from Lu Ming. Xian Yinqing. As soon as Xian Yinqing appeared, the eyes of the two middle-aged men from the Sky Universe Demon sect lit up. Lu Ming, what's going on? Xian Yinqing looked around with a puzzled expression. She was worried when she saw that her second body was severely injured. Dandan and Bubbles were unconscious. Now that she saw that Lu Ming was fine, she heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Ming gave a brief account of what had happened. I see. Xian Yinqing looked around and bowed to the two middle-aged men from the Sky Universe Demon sect. The two middle-aged men from the Sky Universe Demon sect looked at Xian Yinqing and nodded with a smile. They seemed satisfied. They were surprised and satisfied that Xian Yinqing's cultivation had reached the Supreme Being level. 2 years ago, they had met Xian Yinqing. At that time, they were well aware of Xian Yinqing's cultivation. In the continent of the Divine Ruins, Xian Yinqing was able to break through to the Supreme Being level in just 2 years. This kind of talent made them think more highly of Xian Yinqing. Then, Xian Yinqing whispered a few words to the two middle-aged men. One of the middle-aged men nodded and flew into the sky. He joined forces with the burly man from the Divine Dragon Valley to fight the white-haired old man. Sky Universe Demon Sect you, the white-haired old man roared. But he was no match for the two experts. He was suppressed and could only retreat out of the battle. Old man, if you want to fight, I don't mind killing you today. The burly man from the Divine Dragon Valley sneered. Good, very good. Do you really think that the Divine Sky Sect is easy to bully? Let's wait and see. The white-haired old man said angrily, but he didn't dare to make a move. The white-haired old man stopped his attack. The two young men also stopped and backed away. People of the Divine Ruins Continent Group, listen up. I am a deacon of the Sky Celestial Sect in the Yuanlu. Ask the disciples of the Sky Celestial Sect, who have yet to head to the Yuanlu to hurry over. The white-haired old man's voice spread far and wide. Hee. The middle-aged man from Dragon God Valley sneered and walked to Lu Ming's side. He sized up Lu Ming, and his eyes lit up as he said, as expected of a prodigy who has awakened the 9 dragons bloodline. Your talent is amazing. I haven't seen you for 2 years, and your cultivation has already reached the Supreme Being level. This is really rare in a place like the Godly Ruins continent. Thank you for your help, Senior. Lu Ming bowed. Haha, you're a disciple of my Dragon God Valley. Why are you being so courteous? My name is Long Yuanshan, a deacon of Dragon God Valley. You can just call me Deacon Long, Long Yuanshan said in a rather heroic manner. Then he introduced the young man, who was called Long Wei. By the way, what happened? Long Yuanshan looked at the corpse of the Sky Celestial Sect man with a puzzled expression. He knew how strong the Sky Celestial Sect man was, and he found it unbelievable that he was killed by Lu Ming. It's like this. Lu Ming did not hide anything and told him the gist of the matter. He told him about how he was surrounded by the Sky Celestial Sect man and the others 2 years ago, and what happened recently. Of course, Lu Ming skipped over the important matters, such as him entering the Primal Chaos Palace, cultivating the Primal Chaos intent, Dandan and Bubbles. He did not mention anything. He only said that the Sky Celestial Sect man was severely injured by the headless true dragon rider in the core of the Divine Ruins continent. Damn it! The Sky Celestial Sect is so despicable to secretly kill the disciples of my Dragon God Valley. Long Yuanshan shouted angrily as he looked at the white-haired old man from the Sky Celestial Sect in an unfriendly manner. He seemed to be thinking about whether he should attack the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man looked vigilant. In the end, Long Yuanshan also had some misgivings and did not attack. It's good to kill such trash. It's a pity that Long Chun was accepted as a disciple by the Divine Elephant Sect. However, his bloodline is more suitable for the Divine Elephant Sect. Long Yuanshan muttered, then looked at Lu Ming and asked, Lu Ming, did you really obtain the Chaos Origin token in the War of Providence? Yes. Lu Ming nodded. Lu Ming did not hide the fact that he had the Chaos Origin token. Haha, amazing. Who knows, you might have a fortuitous encounter in the future. Long Yuanshan's eyes flashed with surprise. He did not ask any more questions. In fact, there were many things that did not make sense in Lu Ming's words. Long Yuanshan could naturally tell, but he also knew that it was Lu Ming's secret. Lu Ming was so young and had such a cultivation base. It was normal for him to have some secrets. However, some people in the continent of Divine Ruins group have the guts to attack a disciple of my Divine Dragon Valley. They should be taught a lesson. Long Wei, go and teach those who are still alive a lesson. Let them remember that my Divine Dragon Valley is not destroyed. Lu Ming is a disciple of my Divine Dragon Valley. If they want to deal with Lu Ming's family and friends in the future, then they don't need to exist anymore. Long Yuanshan said. Yes. Long Wei nodded and then stepped into the air and left. Thank you, Deacon Long. Lu Ming thanked him. Lu Ming knew that Long Yuanshan was comforting him, and Lu Ming really needed this favor. Although most of the emperors in the continent of Divine Ruins group had been killed by Lu Ming in the previous battle. However, there were still some powerhouses left in the various factions. Although there were not many powerhouses left, Lu Ming was still worried that these people would cause trouble for the Divine Wilderness continent after he left. However, with the powerhouses of the Divine Dragon Valley stepping forward to teach them a lesson, these factions should be obedient. Not long after, a Sky Pride arrived. It was Ji Hongqian. Ji Hongqian's father, Ji Feng, did not participate in the capture of Lu Ming because of Ji Hongqian's persuasion. Therefore, he was spared. There were not many Sky Prides left in the Celestial God sect. There were only 2 of them. Soon the 2 of them arrived. The white-haired elder of the Celestial God sect led the 2 of them onto the ancient altar and left. Lu Ming, I have to go too. Xian Yinqing came to Lu Ming's side and said reluctantly. The Sky Universe Demon sect was only here to pick up Xian Yinqing. Now they had to leave. Little Qing, don't worry. I've asked Senior Long Yuanshan. The Divine Dragon Valley and the Sky Universe Demon sect are in the same territory and are not too far apart. I'll visit you in the future. Lu Ming held Xian Yinqing's hand and said, okay. Xian Yinqing nodded and suddenly kissed Lu Ming on the lips. Lu Ming, you have to work hard. Don't let me surpass your cultivation the next time we meet. After saying that, she smiled brightly and turned to leave. Lu Ming smiled and looked at Xian Yinqing and the 2 powerhouses of the Sky Universe Demon sect leaving. There was a trace of reluctance in his eyes. Little Qing, don't worry. Our separation is only temporary. When we have the strength to dominate the world, we won't have to separate anymore. Lu Ming whispered, and his gaze became firm again. A few days later, the news of Lu Ming's battle with the powerhouses of the 4 celestial palaces spread wildly across the Divine Ruins continent, and even to other continents. Chapter 1395. All the experts who had gone to capture Lu Ming had been killed by Lu Ming, shocking the world. The continent group of Divine Ruins was in an unprecedented uproar. After this battle, the continent group of Divine Ruins was destined to undergo a great reshuffle. Then, there was news that the Divine Dragon Valley of Yuanlu had not been annihilated and was safe and sound. The news that the Divine Dragon Valley had been annihilated was false. This news made those major forces keep quiet out of fear. They no longer had the slightest bit of disloyalty towards Lu Ming and the Divine Wilderness continent. Even those top experts had died, and they did not want to die. Moreover, the Divine Dragon Valley had not been annihilated and Lu Ming was now a disciple of the Divine Dragon Valley. Even if they were given 100 guts, they would not dare to touch the Divine Wilderness continent. Ancient city of Divine Ruins under the altar. Lu Ming, do you have anything else to deal with? We'll go to the Divine Dragon Valley after you're done. Long Yuanshan said. Lu Ming looked towards the south, as if he had pierced through layers of void, and landed on the Divine Wilderness continent. After a while Lu Ming shook his head and said, No. Senior, let's go. Lu Ming had already arranged everything in the Divine Wilderness continent before he left. Now that the matter of the continent group of Divine Ruins had been resolved, there was no need for him to worry too much. The only thing he needed to do now was to go to Yuanlu and cultivate. When his cultivation had increased in the future, It would be easy for him to come back and take a look. All right, let's go, Long Yuanshan said. The three of them climbed up an ancient altar and stepped into the light door of the altar. Lu Ming seemed to have stepped into a void passageway. Countless lights and shadows flashed all around him. After an unknown period of time, his body shook and the lights and shadows disappeared. Lu Ming discovered that he had appeared on an ancient stone platform. He looked around and saw that he was surrounded by desolate mountains. Is this Yuan Lu? Lu Ming looked around curiously and stepped out of the stone platform. Boom! The moment he stepped out of the stone platform, a terrifying pressure acted on Lu Ming's body, causing his body to tremble, and he almost knelt on the ground. He only managed to stabilize his body after exerting some force. Lu Ming felt as if his body had become several hundred times heavier. The air around him seemed to have become incomparably heavy, constantly pressing down on his body. What happened? Lu Ming was bewildered. Only by exerting force in his body could he counteract the external pressure. Lu Ming, do you feel that your body has become several hundred times heavier? There's a strong pressure acting on your body. Long Yuanshan walked out of the stone platform and said with a smile. That's right. Deacon, what's going on? Lu Ming asked curiously. Lu Ming, if you want to understand what's going on, you must first have a rough outline of the geographical distribution of the entire primordial realm, Long Yuanshan said. Then, with a wave of his hand, a picture appeared in the sky. On the picture was a boundless ocean. The primordial realm is a boundless ocean. Within the ocean are countless continents, and the primordial continent is in the center of the ocean. Long Yuanshan stretched out his hand and pointed. On the picture, a continent appeared in the center of the ocean. This continent was very large. Even in the entire ocean, it occupied a very large area. This was the primordial continent. In the primordial realm, the primordial continent is the center. Countless continents of various sizes are scattered outwards. Actually, most of them can't be called continents. They can only be considered islands. Long Yuanshan waved his hand. With the primordial continent as the center, numerous black dots appeared on the rest of the ocean. They were densely packed, and it was unknown how many there were. These black dots were continents. However, compared to the primordial continent, they were like dust. Even some of the bigger continents could not be compared. The difference was too great. So many? Lu Ming gasped a breath of cold air. He stared at the sea, at the countless black spots that were densely packed together. He was filled with shock. Could these all be continents? Continents like the divine wilderness continent? Senior, where are the continents of the divine ruins? Lu Ming asked again. Here, here. Long Yuanshan pointed to the ocean south of the primordial continent. It was a corner that was extremely far away from the primordial continent. There were a few black dots scattered there. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. The continents of the divine ruins were too far away from the primordial continent. They were too small, just like dust. They were almost negligible in the picture. Was this the continents of the divine ruins that he had been living in? However, it was so small in the primordial realm. It was beyond Lu Ming's imagination. The primordial realm is a complete world. It is also very unique. The primordial continent is the center of the primordial realm. The laws of heaven and earth are also the most perfect and flawless. Therefore, the primordial continent is stable, and the origin chi is rich. It is a true cultivation holy land. With the primordial continent as the center, the laws of heaven and earth will become weaker and less perfect. The space is extremely unstable, and the origin chi of heaven and earth will become thinner and thinner. You can easily tear the space apart in the continents of the divine ruins. However, you can try it here. Long Yuanshan patiently explained to Lu Ming. So that's how it is. Lu Ming was amazed. He took a deep breath and realized that the heaven and earth here was filled with rich origin chi. It was origin chi, not spirit chi. The spirit chi of heaven and earth here was very thin. It was mostly origin chi. He casually took a breath, and the surging origin chi gathered in his body. Boom! Then Lu Ming threw a punch. However, a scene that shocked him appeared. His fist only pierced through the air, creating a terrifying whistling sound. However, the space did not move at all. There was not even a ripple. What a stable space. It's unbelievable. In the continents of the divine ruins, he could easily tear the space apart and punch through the void. However, there was not even a ripple in the space here. The closer you are to the primordial continent, the more perfect the laws of heaven and earth are. Everything in the world is also the most perfect and stable. Naturally, the gravity will be stronger, and the pressure on people will also be stronger. Long Yuanshan explained. Bam! Lu Ming stomped heavily on the ground. The rocks exploded and a pit appeared. It's so hard. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. He could clearly sense that the rocks here were just ordinary rocks. They were not hard metal ores. Although he did not use his full strength when he stomped, if he was in the continents of the divine ruins, a mountain range would have collapsed. However, he only created a pit here. Even ordinary rocks were so hard. Long Yuanshan was right. Everything in the world here was more stable than in the continents of the divine ruins because of the perfection of the laws of heaven and earth. The destructive power of a martial emperor realm expert here was much lower than in the continents of the divine ruins. Of course, this also meant that it would be more dangerous for martial artists to venture out. This was because the power of heaven and earth was stronger. Chapter 1396. With Lu Ming's cultivation, even flying would be much slower, let alone tearing through space. Yuan Lu is indeed extraordinary. Lu Ming sighed. Lu Ming, you're wrong. This isn't Yuan Lu. Long Yuanshan smiled. Beside him, the dragon guards smiled as well. Lu Ming's reaction was within their expectations. What? This isn't Yuan Lu? Lu Ming's pupils constricted as he said in shock. Yes. Long Yuanshan waved his hand, and the picture in the air disappeared. He said, this is just a small island near Yuan Lu. In your eyes, this is a continent. If we're really in Yuan Lu, the pressure from the outside world would be stronger than this. Everything in the world would be more stable than this. What? Lu Ming's heart trembled. This wasn't Yuan Lu. It was just an island near Yuan Lu. They were just near Yuan Lu. But everything in the world was already so stable. If the pressure from the outside world was already so strong, how terrifying would the real Yuan Lu be? However, Lu Ming immediately thought of something. The cultivation environment here was already dozens of times better than the continent of God. How good would the cultivation environment in Yuan Lu be? The pressure from the outside world was just a small matter. After some time, one would get used to it. The cultivation environment was the most important, as it could allow one's cultivation to break through continuously. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with even more anticipation. Lu Ming, this is a transit station for outsiders to get used to it. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it if you enter Yuan Lu all of a sudden. Long Yuanshan explained with a smile. Lu Ming nodded to express his understanding. Let's go. Let's move forward. There should be others here. We'll be staying here for half a month. Long Yuanshan said and moved forward. After crossing a large mountain, some lofts appeared in front of them. Lu Ming realized that there were also some young people living here. These young people's cultivation was very strong. There were 8th level spirit gods, 9th level spirit gods, and even perfected spirit gods. Lu Ming saw that the strongest one was at the supreme level. He learned from Long Yuanshan that these youths were the disciples that the Dragon God Valley had recruited from various continents. Like Lu Ming, they had stayed in their original continents due to some matters. They were only heading to the Dragon God Valley now. Therefore, there were not many of them, only about 100 of them. Lu Ming was assigned a room. The next half a month was mainly to adapt to the environment here. This was because the environment of the continent of God was too different from the Yuan continent. In the courtyard of the pavilion, Lu Ming brandished a set of fist techniques, his figure leaping up and down. He let his body slowly adapt to the environment here. At the same time, he also let the circulation speed and frequency of the true essence in his meridians adapt to this place. A few hours later, Lu Ming stopped and felt comfortable all over. His body had also adapted slightly. In the beginning, when Lu Ming moved, he would either use a little more strength or a little less strength. Now it was much better. The Yuan Qi here is really rich, and the will of heaven and earth is so clear. Lu Ming sensed carefully. The will of heaven and earth here was dozens of times clearer than in the continent of God. In other words, it was many times easier for a martial artist to comprehend the will of heaven and earth here than in the continent of God. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Lu Ming and more than 100 youths stepped into the teleportation array and headed to the Yuan continent. It felt as if they were in the void tunnel again. After some time, that feeling disappeared, and they reappeared on a huge altar. This is a snow mountain. Lu Ming looked around and realized that this was a snow mountain. Little guys, welcome to the Yuan continent's Dragon God Valley. Long Yuanshan's deep voice sounded. He stepped out of the altar and said, "You better be prepared when you come out." Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He understood what Long Yuanshan meant. The laws of heaven and earth in the Yuan continent were perfect, so the pressure of heaven and earth might be even greater. On the altar, because of the protection of the array, he could not feel it. "Let's go. Yuan continent, I'm finally here." These youths were extremely excited and flew out of the altar one after another. However, when these youths flew out of the altar, their bodies trembled. Some of the weakest among them almost could not stabilize their bodies. What a strong pressure! Lu Ming also flew out of the altar and immediately felt a terrifying pressure acting on his body. The weight of his body was also extremely shocking. The pressure here was probably hundreds or even thousands of times greater than in the continent of God. Lu Ming was shocked. Also, it's so cold. Lu Ming felt a chill run through his body. This was a snow mountain, so the temperature was shockingly low. With Lu Ming's cultivation, he could not feel the cold of ordinary snow and ice. However, the temperature here made him feel a chill run through his body. The origin chi of heaven and earth. Lu Ming took a deep breath. Immediately, the origin chi of heaven and earth surged towards him. It was unimaginably rich. Lu Ming felt that if he casually breathed in, the amount of origin chi would be equivalent to the amount of a low-grade origin stone. The origin chi of heaven and earth was rich, while the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was extremely thin. Whoosh! In the distance, a burly old man in a short-sleeved shirt with bare arms flew over and landed in front of Lu Ming and the rest. Long Yuanshan and the rest greeted the old man. "Lu Ming, I'll leave first. This is Deacon Long Yuanshan. He will arrange your accommodations." Long Yuanshan said to Lu Ming. Lu Ming nodded. Then Long Yuanshan and the others who went to the other continents like him left one after another. "Alright, follow me. I'll take you to your accommodations," Long Yuanshan said and flew forward. Everyone quickly followed. However, they had just arrived, and the pressure of the outside world was too strong. For a while they could not adapt to it. This was after half a month of adapting at the transit station. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult. After flying down the snow mountain, their field of vision widened. In front of them, an incomparably huge glacier canyon appeared in front of them. This glacier canyon was formed by the separation of two mountain ranges. In the sky, heavy snow swirled, and the world was covered in white. Lu Ming looked into the distance and found that in front of the huge glacier canyon, there were also snow mountains. However, they were far away and could not be seen clearly in the vast snow. Dragon chi, so much dragon chi, so strong. Lu Ming felt that the Nine Dragons bloodline was a little hot. Through the Nine Dragons bloodline he was shocked. Through the Nine Dragons bloodline, he seemed to be able to see countless dragon chi in the glacier canyon and the snow mountain further away. In the huge canyon, there was a lot of dragon chi that was still weak. However, behind the canyon, in the vast snow mountain, there was some dragon chi that was earth-shattering. In front of it, Lu Ming was like an ant. Boom! A terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming's expression changed drastically. He could not help but take a few steps back and quickly withdrew his senses. So strong. That aura is far beyond an emperor. Is that the aura of a saint? Lu Ming's heart was in a perilous situation. Chapter 1397. The burly old man, Long Yuanshan, glanced at Lu Ming and said, "There are many experts in the valley. You'd better not use your bloodline to sense them. Otherwise, you'll only be asking for trouble." Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Some of the others were in awe. Obviously, Lu Ming was not the only one who had sensed the aura of the snowy mountain in front of them through their bloodline. The disciples recruited by the Dragon God Valley were all geniuses who had awakened the bloodline of the true dragon. It was easy for them to sense each other. The group continued flying forward. It's so cold. After flying into the huge glacier canyon, the temperature dropped even lower. Moreover, the temperature kept dropping as they went further in. While flying, Lu Ming sized up the surroundings. The glacier canyon was huge. The glacier walls on both sides were tens of thousands of feet tall. On the glacier walls, one could see houses and palaces carved out of ice. However, most of them were cave dwellings that had been carved out of the walls of the glacier. Moreover, there were some side valleys on both sides of the canyon. It was like a main vein with some branches extending out. Some people lived in these branch valleys. After flying for more than 10 minutes, the burly old man led them into a valley. There were many caves carved out on both sides of the valley. At a glance, there were at least a few thousand caves. Many of the caves were already occupied. As if sensing the arrival of people, some people walked out of the caves. They were all very young, the same generation as Lu Ming and the others. What a strong cultivation! Lu Ming's pupils shrank when he sensed the cultivation of these people. Supreme Being, these young men were all Supreme Being. However, Lu Ming immediately felt relieved. The cultivation environment here was too good. It was many times better than the continent of God. Even a pig could cultivate to the martial king realm and work hard, or even the spiritual God realm explained in detail. Not to mention Lu Ming's peerless geniuses. Right now, you can stay here for the time being. The people here are like disciples, newly selected. They needed to pass from the other continents before they could be considered. However, they came 2 years earlier than you. The standards of the Yuan Lu Great glacial valley is only the outer valley. Were really harsh. You are not official disciples of the divine dragon valley yet. The man waved his hand. You can only be considered as reserved disciples. The token had a lifelike ice dragon carved on it of the divine dragon valley. Waved after passing the test, and the jade tokens flew to Lu Ming until the trial. Lu Ming grabbed one of the diligently during this period of time. There's a number on this token with your talents, which represents the number of the ice to reach the Martial Highness realm in 4 months. Check in according to the number. Most of those who came here 2 years ago is the identity token of Martial Highness disciple. Let me tell you, this assessment is a great opportunity. I'll come back after a while to explain the details of the assessment to you guys. The greater your chances of obtaining the opportunity. The burly old man left the place. Everyone looked for the corresponding ice cave, according to the number on the jade token. Nice to meet you, brother. Just as Lu Ming was about to look for his cave residence, a clear voice was heard. Lu Ming looked sideways and saw a lady looking at him with a smile. The lady was wearing a white dress. She had a sweet smile and fair skin. She was a rare beauty. Behind the lady was a young man in a white shirt and holding a folding fan. Lu Ming was a little surprised. He did not know these two people. They should be the disciples who came here 2 years ago and had just walked out of the ice cave. If he did not know them, why did they greet him? Hello. Lu Ming replied politely. The young lady blinked and looked at Lu Ming carefully. She seemed to be very curious. Lu Ming touched his nose and was a little speechless. Lu Ming was not narcissistic enough to think that a beauty would take a fancy to him as soon as he arrived. Little sister, what are you doing? Behind the lady, the man holding a folding fan was also very curious. Your bloodline is very special, the lady suddenly said. Lu Ming was stunned again. Brother, please don't misunderstand. I am Qiu Yingying, and this is my elder brother Qiu Hao. How should I address you? The lady smiled. Lu Ming. Lu Ming replied. Brother Lu, my bloodline is quite special. I have been sensing your bloodline just now and feel that your bloodline has been suppressing mine. So I am very curious and want to befriend you, Qiu Yingying said. I see. Lu Ming guessed that what she had sensed was most likely his 9 dragons bloodline. Buzz. At that moment, the shadow of a true dragon appeared behind Qiu Yingying and disappeared in a flash. But Lu Ming still saw it clearly. Qiu Yingying's true dragon bloodline was not a 5-clawed true dragon, but a 6-clawed one. It was actually a 6-clawed true dragon. According to legend, the true dragons all had 5 claws, and the 9 dragons were a variant of the true dragons. Only then would they have 9 claws. However, Lu Ming did not expect there to be a 6-clawed true dragon in the world. Perhaps it was also a variant of the true dragon. Lu Ming guessed. Brother Lu, my bloodline is quite special. It is a variant of the true dragon and has 6 claws. It is more powerful than ordinary true dragons, so I am very curious. What is your bloodline? Can it suppress me? Xiao Yingying blinked and looked at Lu Ming carefully. She was very curious. My bloodline? Lu Ming whispered. As he spoke, the 9 dragons' bloodline appeared behind him, and he immediately put it away. Xiao Yingying and Xiao Hao's eyes widened. 9 dragons? Your bloodline is the legendary 9 dragons? No wonder you can suppress me. Xiao Yingying exclaimed in surprise. Lu Ming smiled. There was no need to hide the 9 dragons' bloodline. Once they fought, others would know immediately. Brother Lu, it's your first time here. Have a good rest. My brother and I came here 2 years ago. We will show you around in a few days. Xiao Yingying said with a smile. All right, then I'll thank you in advance. Lu Ming cupped his fists, and then found his ice cave and walked in. There was an ice door at the entrance of the ice cave. It was activated by a jade talisman and automatically closed. The ice cave was very big and wide. It was 100 meters in length and width, and at least 10 meters in height. There were ice tables, ice chairs, and even ice beds inside. Chapter 1398. Lu Ming walked to the wall and clawed at the ice wall. Crack! Only a few claw marks appeared on the ice wall, and they were not deep. It's so hard. Everything in the Yuan continent is much harder than the transit station. Compared to the Godly Ruins continent, it is incomparable. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. After that, Lu Ming began to practice martial arts to adapt to the external pressure. After practicing for a few hours, Lu Ming stopped and felt comfortable all over. Then, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Once the true dragon fighting art was activated, the rich origin qi between heaven and earth frantically gathered toward Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. What rich origin qi? Lu Ming discovered that absorbing the primordial qi of heaven and earth here was comparable to swallowing low-grade primordial stones. This was too shocking. When one cultivated here, one did not even need low-grade origin stones. The surging origin qi was constantly being swallowed and refined, turning into true origin. At the same time, Lu Ming's mind entered a state of emptiness. He began to comprehend heaven and earth, and nurtured the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. In this place, Lu Ming realized that not only had the essence of heaven and earth become clearer, but the great Tao of heaven and earth, which was even more profound than the essence of heaven and earth, was also clearer. This was almost impossible to sense in the Godly Ruins continent. Lu Ming was overjoyed. Comprehending the great Tao of heaven and earth would allow the sovereign's domain to improve faster. It was no wonder that the sovereigns in the Godly Ruins continent cultivated very slowly. Especially in the Godly Wilderness continent, most of the sovereigns were stuck at level 1 Martial Royal Realm. Those who could reach level 2 Martial Royal Realm were the top experts. There were very few of them. It was no wonder that the sovereigns in the Godly Ruins continent racked their brains to enter the Yuan continent and cultivate there. This was because the cultivation environment was too different. The difference was too great. After those sovereigns came to the Yuan continent, their cultivation would probably improve by leaps and bounds. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Lu Ming finally ended his cultivation. It feels so good to be able to cultivate here. Lu Ming's face was full of amazement. He realized that cultivating here for half a day was equivalent to cultivating in the Godly Wilderness continent for a month. His embryonic form of the chaotic domain had matured again. It was getting closer to full maturity. Wow, Lu Ming, you're in Yuan Lu. Haha, you finally left that poor and remote place. A Dandan's voice sounded in Lu Ming. It was Dandan. It had climbed onto Lu Ming's shoulder and was sucking in the air with its mouth. Large amounts of origin energy were sucked into Dandan's mouth. Dandan, you're awake. Lu Ming was delighted. Dandan had been unconscious for almost a month since the last battle. 4. Dandan glanced at Lu Ming, then said with a sad face, Lu Ming, you've suffered heavy losses this time. Although you've woken up, you're far from recovered. Take out all your spiritual herbs. Having said that, she stared at Lu Ming with sparkling eyes. Alright, let's enter the mountain river diagram. Lu Ming said, and entered the mountain river diagram with Dandan. In a valley, Bubble was still curled up and sleeping soundly. There was a transparent bubble at the tip of his nose that was fluctuating in size. Lu Ming's heart ached. It seemed that the little guy had suffered heavy losses in the last battle. Lu Ming waved his hand, and the valley was immediately filled with spiritual herbs. All kinds of spiritual herbs of various grades were piled up in the valley. In that battle, hundreds of sovereigns were killed. The spiritual herbs in those storage rings were terrifying. Lu Ming took them all out for Dandan and Bubble to eat to their heart's content. Ha ha ha, Lu Ming! You're very generous this time. Dandan's eyes lit up, and immediately rushed into the pile of spiritual herbs. He grabbed a handful of spiritual herbs, and stuffed them into his mouth. Chirp chirp. Seeming to have sensed the aura of the spirit herbs, Bubbles woke up. It glanced at Lu Ming in a daze, and then at the pile of spirit herbs in a daze. Afterward, its gem-like eyes emitted bright rays of light, and it pounced into the pile of spirit herbs, gulping them down in big mouthfuls. However, there were so many spiritual herbs here. The two guys ate as much as they wanted, but soon their stomachs bulged. They lay there and burped, their mouths full of medicinal fragrance. The mountain river diagram has its own space, but the environment seems to be the same as the divine wilderness continent. I should absorb some origin chi to improve the environment here. Lu Ming thought. In the mountain river diagram, there were mountains, rivers, flowers, and trees. Later on, Lu Ming captured many demonic beasts and planted many spiritual herbs in the mountain ridge. However, the environment here was similar to the divine wilderness continent. Whether it was the spiritual herbs or the demonic beasts, their growth was slow. If the environment was the same as the divine wilderness continent, the spiritual herbs in the mountain river diagram would grow faster. With a thought, Lu Ming came out of the mountain river diagram and reappeared in the ice cave. Then, the mountain river diagram appeared in Lu Ming's hand. He opened the mountain river diagram and whispered, "Absorb." Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the mountain river diagram released a powerful suction force and absorbed the origin chi between heaven and earth. The origin chi between heaven and earth formed a funnel-like shape and crazily gathered toward the mountain river diagram. At this moment, the people in the valley were alarmed. The geniuses who were cultivating were awakened. What's going on? Why is the origin chi of heaven and earth gathering in one direction? Who's cultivating? That's impossible. Even a ruler wouldn't cause such a huge commotion when he cultivates. Who is it? Voices were heard. Some people walked out of the ice cave and sensed carefully. Although they knew which ice cave it was, they did not know who it was. However, this effect was only limited to the Branch Valley. After all, the origin chi here was too rich, and the Branch Valley was very vast. This is the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. Originally, the mountain river diagram's absorption of the origin chi between heaven and earth would not cause such a big commotion. It was mainly because of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. The Enlightenment Ancient Tree had 3 crisp leaves on it. Its branches were very thin, even smaller than a pinky finger. In the divine wilderness continent, the Enlightenment Ancient Tree grew too slowly. Now the Enlightenment Ancient Tree was glowing and shining. A mysterious aura lingered on it, as it kept absorbing the origin chi from the outside world. At the same time, Lu Ming sensed that the Enlightenment Ancient Tree seemed to be resonating with the great path between heaven and earth. Wisps of great path aura were emitted from the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. In just a moment, Lu Ming felt that the branches of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree had grown a little thicker, and its leaves had become greener. The 4th leaf. All of a sudden, Lu Ming's eyes widened. He noticed that the 4th leaf had also grown. It seems that the Enlightenment Ancient Tree has a chance to fully grow in the Yuan continent. It's considered good that it can survive in the divine wilderness continent. Lu Ming thought to himself. He was overjoyed. If the Enlightenment Ancient Tree fully grew, it would be of great help to him. Lu Ming took out a lot of spiritual liquid and watered the roots of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. It seems that I have to get more spiritual herbs in the future to let the Enlightenment Ancient Tree grow as soon as possible. Chapter 1399. Just like that, the mountain river diagram, and the enlightenment ancient tree, frantically absorbed origin chi for 3 days and 3 nights before calming down. The mountain river diagram was already filled with rich origin chi. Lu Ming put away the mountain river diagram. The following days were very peaceful. Lu Ming cultivated and practiced martial arts every day to adapt to the environment. Half a month later, Lu Ming had completely adapted to the environment of Yuanlu. At that moment, Lu Ming opened the door of the ice cave and went out to take a breather. "Brother Lu," a delicate voice called out. Lu Ming looked in the direction of the voice and saw the siblings, Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao. "Miss Qiu, Brother Qiu, what a coincidence." Lu Ming smiled. "Brother Lu, how have you adapted during this period?" Qiu Hao waved his folding fan and said with a smile. To be honest, Qiu Hao was very handsome. He wore a long robe and waved his folding fan like an elegant young master. "I've completely adapted," Lu Ming said with a smile. "That's great. We're going to the market. Brother Lu, do you want to come with us?" Qiu Yingying said. "Market? Sure." Lu Ming agreed immediately. He was also very curious. The environment of Yuanlu was so good that it would definitely produce countless treasures. The divine wilderness continent could not compare to it. Lu Ming also wanted to see it. If there were suitable ones, Lu Ming also wanted to buy some. The 3 of them walked out of the branch valley together. Then they walked along the huge glacier canyon and walked into the depths of the canyon. This canyon was only the outer valley. The people who lived here were basically reserved disciples and some servants. The real Dragon God Valley was inside the canyon, which was a vast snowy mountain. The market was deep in the canyon. Many official disciples of the Dragon God Valley would come and go there. Only then would there be good things. Soon Lu Ming and the others arrived at the market. The market covered a very large area. There were stalls on both sides of the street. The layout was similar to that of the divine wilderness continent. People came and went in the market. So many powerhouses. Lu Ming spread out his spiritual sense and scanned it slightly. His heart trembled. 5 out of 10 people walking on the street were emperors. Some of them were very young, looking like they were in their 20s. The most shocking thing was that Lu Ming saw a few 12 or 13-year-old teenagers. They still had a childish look on their faces, but they were actually emperors. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Seeing Lu Ming's expression, Qiu Yingying smiled and said, "Brother Lu, we were too shocked when we first arrived. But it's also because the cultivation environment of Yuanlu is. Indeed." Lu Ming let out a long breath. Martial emperors were absolute overlords in the divine wasteland continent. They ruled over a region and ruled over a region. However, in the Yuan continent and the divine Dragon Valley, they were everywhere. Because emperors were nothing in Yuanlu. If one did not have a backer, it would be very dangerous to cultivate in the outside world. If one was not careful, one might die. In Dragon God Valley, rank 1 to rank 3 martial emperors are worthless. They have no status and are like servants. Rank 4 martial emperors and above have some status. Rank 7 martial emperors and above are the backbone of Dragon God Valley. Some of them can be assigned to some positions. Qiu Yingying explained in a low voice. She then added, "Of course, young geniuses are not included." Lu Ming nodded. He knew that young geniuses had different statuses wherever they went. Because young geniuses had unlimited possibilities. This is life elixir. Moreover, it's of the highest quality. Suddenly, Lu Ming saw the life elixir in a stall. The highest quality life elixir. Lu Ming had seen the life elixir in the divine wilderness continent. However, Lu Ming had never heard of the highest quality life elixir. It was almost extinct in the divine wilderness continent, and even the continent of godly ruins. The highest quality life elixir was very useful for emperors, as it could heal their injuries. Yuanlu was indeed worthy of its name. He saw such a precious spiritual elixir as soon as he arrived. Lu Ming's second body was severely injured. The highest quality life elixir was very important to the second body. Lu Ming had to get it. "Senior, how much is this bottle of life elixir?" Lu Ming cupped his fists at the stall owner and asked. The stall owner was an old man with white hair. The old man raised a finger and said, 100,000 origin stones. 100,000 origin stones? Lu Ming was stunned. It was not because it was too expensive, but because it was too cheap. A bottle of the highest quality life elixir was only a legendary treasure in the continent of godly ruins. How could it be sold for only 100,000 origin stones? Lu Ming was in disbelief. He asked again, "Senior, it's only 100,000 origin stones?" "Of course, not one less, not one more," the old man said. "All right, I'll buy it then." Lu Ming took out a storage ring with 100,000 primordial stones inside. The old man took it and scanned it with his spiritual consciousness. His expression changed, and he threw the storage ring back to Lu Ming. "Junior, are you playing with me?" Lu Ming was confused. "Senior, please don't blame him. Brother Lu just came from another continent, so there are some rules that he doesn't quite understand." Qiu Yingying quickly tried to smooth things over. "Oh, so you're a new reserved disciple from another continent?" The old man's expression softened. "Brother Lu, the origin stones that this senior is talking about are middle-quality origin stones." Qiu Yingying quickly transmitted her voice to Lu Ming. "They're middle-quality origin stones?" "Yes, the origin stones that are commonly used in Yuanlu are middle-quality origin stones. Generally speaking, middle-quality origin stones are referred to. Low-quality origin stones are almost useless in Yuanlu. They're considered trash only under special circumstances." Qiu Yingying explained. "I see." Lu Ming smiled. The cultivation environment in Yuanlu was too good. Cultivating casually was equivalent to cultivating with low-quality origin stones. Therefore, low-quality origin stones were basically useless. Only middle-quality origin stones were mainstream. A middle-quality origin stone was equivalent to 10,000 low-quality origin stones. 100,000 middle-quality origin stones were equivalent to 1 billion low-quality origin stones. The price was reasonable. However, there was a problem. Lu Ming did not have any middle-quality origin stones. He had killed so many emperors, and his storage rings were filled with low-quality origin stones. There were at least tens of billions of them. However, after arriving in Yuanlu, low-quality origin stones were completely useless. What a waste! Lu Ming wailed in his heart. His heart ached. So many origin stones were useless in Yuanlu. They had become trash. Now Lu Ming had become a pauper. He had no money. Lu Ming's face turned green. Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao smiled bitterly when they saw Lu Ming's expression. They were the same when they first arrived. "Little guy, haha, the low-quality origin stones on you are useless, right? Do you have any treasures on you? You can use them to exchange." Chapter 1400. Treasure. Lu Ming pondered. He had given all the spiritual herbs he had to Dandan and Bubbles. However, even if he took them out, they would not be worth much. Lu Ming would not take out anything that was too valuable, such as the lightning cauldron and the air-frozen pearl. Only an emperor's spiritual weapon would be left. "Senior, how many medium primordial stones would an emperor's spiritual weapon be worth?" Lu Ming took out a large saber and asked. Lu Ming had killed many emperors in the Godly Ruins continent, and had obtained nearly 20 emperor spiritual weapons. An emperor spiritual weapon is not bad. It is worth 1,000,000 primordial stones. The old man's eyes lit up. 1,000,000 primordial stones? Lu Ming's eyes also lit up. The value of an emperor spiritual weapon had greatly exceeded his expectations. It was even more valuable than he had imagined. "Brother Lu, an emperor spiritual weapon can only be fully unleashed by those above the 7th martial royal realm. Only saints can refine it. Although there are many of them in the Yuan continent, there are too many high-level martial royal realm cultivators in the Yuan continent. The demand is too great. Therefore, the value of an emperor spiritual weapon has always been very high." Qiu Yingying explained to Lu Ming. Lu Ming suddenly understood. Indeed, there were many emperor spiritual weapons in the Yuan continent. However, there were even more high-level martial royal realm cultivators. Basically, the supply could not meet the demand. Therefore, the value was naturally high. For example, in the small continents outside the Yuan continent, such as the Godly Wilderness continent, emperor spiritual weapons were usually left behind by saints or high-level martial royal realm cultivators when they went to those places. It was basically impossible for anyone to refine them. Most of them were passed down from the Yuan continent. For example, Lu Ming had obtained the Emperor's spiritual tower in the Saint Mansion secret realm. It was also brought over from the Yuan continent by the heavenly profound saint. The Emperor's spiritual weapons in the godly ruins continent were usually obtained this way. They had only accumulated a few after countless years. Little brother, do you want to sell this Emperor's spiritual weapon? If you want to sell it, I will buy it. The old man said, I want to sell it. Senior, I have another one. Following that, Lu Ming took out an emperor-rank spirit weapon that looked like an iron rod. The elder and Xiao Yingying were surprised. They didn't expect Lu Ming to have so many emperor-grade spiritual weapons. Alright, I'll buy it. Here are 9 million origin stones and this bottle of top-grade life water. The old man handed Lu Ming a storage ring and a bottle of life water. Lu Ming took it and scanned it with his spiritual sense. He found a pile of raw stones lying in the storage ring. Every single one of them was filled with concentrated origin energy. Compared to low-tier origin stones, it was many times purer and denser. This was a middle-grade origin stone. Cultivating with a middle-grade origin stone was naturally many times faster than cultivating with a low-grade origin stone. After putting it away, Lu Ming continued to wander around with Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao. On the way, Lu Ming discovered that there were too many natural treasures here. All kinds of spiritual herbs were level 9. Level 8 spiritual herbs were rarely seen. There were also all kinds of refining materials and spiritual liquids, all of which were of a very high level. Along the way, Lu Ming bought a lot of spiritual herbs. Soon the 9 million middle-grade origin stones were almost used up. Lu Ming's heart ached. Those were 2 emperor-grade spiritual weapons. However, the spiritual liquids and spiritual herbs he bought were very useful. The spiritual liquids could promote the growth of the tree of enlightenment, while the spiritual herbs could speed up the recovery of Dandan and Bubbles. After coming to Yuanlu, he realized that he had become a pauper. Although he still had a lot of emperor-grade spiritual weapons, they would be used up soon if he continued to use them like this. During this time, Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao also bought some things. Get lost. I'm interested in this turquoise blue fruit. Suddenly a loud roar was heard. Nonsense, what do you mean you're interested in it? I said I'm interested in it. Get lost if you don't have money. Another voice was heard. Who do you think you are to tell me to get lost? Let's fight in the arena if you dare. The voice from before was heard. Let's fight then. The voice from behind was heard. Then they saw a group of people flying in a certain direction. Emperor-grade spiritual weapons are about to fight. Brother Lu, let's go to the arena and see what's going on. Qiu Yingying said. Alright, I'd like to see it too. Lu Ming was curious. The 3 of them followed the crowd to the arena. If the disciples of the Dragon God Valley had any conflicts, they would usually settle it on the sparring platform. Boom! Boom! As soon as Lu Ming and the others arrived, they heard a violent explosion. On a huge arena, 2 figures were constantly colliding with each other. The 2 burly men in their 30s were constantly punching each other with their fists. Violent explosions were heard between heaven and earth. 3rd-level martial royal realm, but their combat strength is very strong. Lu Ming's eyes widened. He realized that the cultivation of the 2 men was at the early stage of the 3rd-level martial royal realm, but their combat strength was beyond Lu Ming's imagination. He felt that the LV4 martial royal realm experts on the continent of godly ruins were no match for the 2 men. The combat strength of the 2 men had completely surpassed the combat strength of the LV4 martial royal realm experts on the continent of godly ruins. Lu Ming was shocked. Brother Lu, do you feel that the 2 men's combat strength is very strong? Qiu Yingying said. Indeed, they're much stronger than the emperors on the continent I'm from. Lu Ming nodded. Yes, we were also very surprised when we first arrived. But this is the combat strength of an ordinary emperor from Yuanlu. Qiu Yingying explained. In Yuanlu, both the martial path and the inscription path have been developed to the extreme. It's much stronger than the other continents. All kinds of martial techniques, bloodlines, intent realms, and spiritual bodies have been developed to the extreme. Therefore, the cultivators here are very strong, far stronger than those on the other continents. For example, the emperors, unless they're low-ranking servants, usually those with a little status, have cultivated realm martial techniques, and their combat strength is very shocking. Yuanlu, it's indeed Yuanlu. Lu Ming couldn't help but clench his fists together. The cultivation civilization of the Yuan continent had already developed to the extreme. It was far from what the godly ruins continent could compare to. It could be said that a decent cultivator in the Yuan continent would be a genius that could challenge those with a higher cultivation level than him. Lu Ming thought of the people that Di Xian had brought with him. Those people's combat strength was not very strong. Maybe the status of those people was akin to servants in the Di clan, which was why their combat prowess wasn't particularly high. Lu Ming's thoughts were in a whirl, and he felt a great pressure. Here there were too many powerhouses. Rulers were all over the streets, and only saints were high and mighty powerhouses. Moreover, the emperors here had extraordinary combat strength. In the continent of godly ruins, Lu Ming could fight with a peak LV3 martial royal realm expert, without using the chaotic flipping sky seal, and without the help of his second body. However, if Lu Ming did not cast the chaotic flipping sky seal, and did not have the help of his second body, he might only be able to fight with an early-stage second-level martial emperor martial artist. Chapter 1401. The gap was too big. In the continent of God, Lu Ming could injure a fourth-level martial emperor when he used the chaotic sky seal. In this place, Lu Ming was no match for the two burly men in the early stage of the third-level martial emperor, let alone the fourth-level martial emperor. Moreover, they were ordinary martial emperors. What if he met a genius? How strong would he be? It seems that I was a frog in a well when I was trapped in this corner of the continent of God. Lu Ming clenched his fists. While feeling the strong pressure, Lu Ming was full of anticipation. His blood was boiling with excitement. Yuan continent was the real big stage. It was colorful, and it was far from what the continent of God could compare to. On the fighting ring, the two exchanged hundreds of moves. In the end, both of them were injured and left the place. However, after the two left, two more people went up to fight. After that, Lu Ming watched 5 battles, all of which were between emperors. As expected, most of the emperors here were much stronger than the emperors in the continent of God. Lu Ming more or less had an idea. After that, Lu Ming, Qiu Yingying, and the others returned to their residence. After returning to his residence, Lu Ming first poured the life water on his second body. As expected, his second body glowed, and its recovery speed greatly increased. Then, Lu Ming continued to cultivate. In Yuanlu, the cultivation level below the martial emperor was too low. Only by breaking through to the emperor realm, as soon as possible, could he gain a foothold. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in Dragon God Valley for a month. During this period, Lu Ming would occasionally go out and buy some books to read. They were all about Yuanlu. As he had just arrived, he naturally had to understand the world he was in. On this day, there were suddenly sounds of drums outside. It was the sound of drums. Someone was summoning them. Lu Ming ended his cultivation and walked out of the cave. He saw Long Yuanchuan standing in the valley. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Youths flew out from the various ice caves and stood in the valley. There were more than 1,000 of them. Lu Ming discovered that some of the youths who had come with him were progressing very quickly. Some of them were originally at the 8th level of the Spirit God realm, but now they had broken through and reached the 9th level of the Spirit God realm, or even the Great Circle of the Spirit God realm. These people were the top geniuses of the Master-Teacher continent, and there was no way they would be lacking in terms of talent. As such, they were able to advance their cultivation by leaps and bounds. Alright, you newcomers have already been here for a month. You should have gotten used to it. Now there are still 3 months before your assessment. Now, I will explain in detail your assessment mission in 3 months. In 3 months, your assessment mission will be to explore a secret realm. Long Yuanchuan said. Explore a secret realm? Lu Ming and the others were all stunned. That's right. Only by walking out of the dungeon alive can one be considered to have passed the test. and become an official disciple of the Divine Dragon Valley. Long Yuanchuan said. Many people's faces changed. It seemed that the secret realm was quite dangerous. Long Yuanchuan seemed to have seen through everyone's thoughts. He smiled and said, although this secret realm is dangerous, let me tell you, it is also a great opportunity. I don't know how many martial emperors and even sages want to enter, but they can't. Because this secret realm is a great emperor's secret realm. When he said the last sentence, Long Yuanchuan deliberately emphasized his voice. What? Great emperor's secret realm? Great emperor? Everyone, including Lu Ming, was stunned. They could not help but widen their eyes. Great emperor's secret realm? Could it be a secret realm left behind by a great emperor? A great emperor was a top expert in the primordial realm, an existence that dominated the world and ruled the sky. What kind of treasures would there be in a secret realm left behind by such a person? Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Even sages were out of their reach, let alone great emperors who were above sages. This is the first time that this great emperor's secret realm has been discovered. After investigation, only people below martial emperors can enter. Those above martial emperors are not allowed to enter. Even sages are not allowed to enter. Therefore, you must make good use of this time and raise your cultivation to the martial emperor level. According to the sages, martial emperors and above are not allowed to enter the great emperor's secret realm. However, it is not a problem for you to break through after entering. Therefore, if some martial emperors enter the great emperor's secret realm to break through to the martial emperor level, they will be able to seize the opportunity and obtain the treasures. Also this time, all the top forces in the Tsang state will send people in. This is the danger. Therefore, in the next 3 months, try to raise your strength as much as possible. You must grasp the opportunity yourself. Long Yuanchuan continued to explain. I see. After hearing this, Lu Ming finally had some answers to some of the doubts in his heart. Lu Ming finally knew why the Divine Dragon Valley, Heavenly Deity sect and other sects would travel a great distance to the Divine Ruins continent to select disciples. It turned out that it was all because of the great emperor's secret realm. They recruited geniuses from various continents to enter the great emperor's secret realm. The Yuanlu was divided into many large states. The Tsang state was a large state in the south of the Yuanlu. The Divine Dragon Valley was a powerful force in the Tsang state. There were countless large and small forces in the Tsang state. However, there were a total of 13 top forces that stood at the peak of the Tsang state. These 13 forces were the overlords of the Tsang state. The Divine Dragon Valley was one of the 13 forces. In addition, the Heavenly Deity sect, Heavenly Universe Demon sect, Nine Heaven Sword sect, and even the Heavenly King Hall, that had caused chaos in the Divine Wilderness continent because of a Heavenly King token, were also one of the 13 major forces. This time, these major forces would send people into the Great Emperor's secret realm. Therefore, these major forces would send people to the small continents overseas to recruit disciples. The D clan is not in the Tsang state. I wonder where they are. Lu Ming thought to himself. The Yuanlu was too vast and the Tsang state was only a small part of it. The books that Lu Ming had bought mostly introduced the Tsang state. Lu Ming was not too sure about the places outside the Tsang state. After the announcement, Long Yuanchuan left the place. However, these youths could not calm down. After that, they returned to their cave residences and cultivated in seclusion. It was obvious that they could break through to the monarch realm after entering the great emperor's secret realm. Therefore, if they raised their cultivation to the limit of the supreme being realm and broke through to the emperor realm after entering the great emperor's secret realm, they would have an absolute advantage. Lu Ming began to place more of his attention on the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. Now the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was getting closer and closer to its limit. As long as the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was cultivated to its limit, he would be able to break through to the emperor realm. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Dong, dong, dong. On this day, there was an intense rumble outside. It was the sound of a drum being struck. It was the sound of the drum being summoned again. However, Wasn't there a gathering 3 days ago to announce the great emperor's secret realm? Why was there a gathering now? With doubts, Lu Ming walked out of the cave residence. Outside the cave residence, 3 youths stood proudly. Chapter 1402. When the crowd gathered in the valley, they looked at the 3 young men in surprise. Just now, these 3 young men had sounded the drum. Why did the 3 of them sound the drum and gather the crowd? Everyone is here, right? One of the young men swept his gaze across the crowd and said plainly. No one made a sound. All right. I believe all of you have heard the news a few days ago. In 3 months, we will be entering the great emperor's mystic realm. The young man continued speaking with a smirk. Let me tell you, this is the good fortune that you have accumulated over several lifetimes. If it wasn't for this reason, all of you would never be able to join the Dragon God Valley, much less enter the great emperor's mystic realm. Therefore, you have to seize this opportunity. Do you understand? The young man's voice reverberated throughout the valley. However, everyone could hear the strong disdain in his voice. It was like a prince looking down on a group of beggars. Many people frowned, but did not make a sound. From their tone, these people should be locals. They weren't from a continent outside the Yuan continent like them. Since they were from the Yuan continent, no one knew if they were related to the upper echelons of the Dragon God Valley. Therefore, no one refuted the young man. All right, let's get down to business. The person in front of you is the peerless genius of the Dragon God Valley, young Master Yin Feng. Aren't you going to greet him? The young man continued speaking as he pointed at the young man in the middle. Among the 3 young men, the one in the middle was the leader. He looked to be in his early 20s. He wore a silver robe, and his face was cold and arrogant. He looked at Lu Ming and the rest with disdain. Greetings, young Master Yin Feng. A few people cupped their fists. What kind of attitude is this? Let me tell you, young Master Yin Feng will be entering the great emperor's mystic realm as well. Now, I will give you a chance to submit to young Master Yin Feng and become his subordinates. After entering the great emperor's mystic realm, you will be under young Master Yin Feng's command. In the future, young Master Yin Feng will take care of you when you are in the Dragon God Valley. The young man's words finally exposed their true intentions. They wanted Lu Ming and the rest to submit to young Master Yin Feng and become his subordinates. Lu Ming sneered. The great emperor mystic realm was filled with opportunities. Naturally, outsiders like them wouldn't be the only ones to enter. The local elites of the Yuanlu's great sects would definitely enter as well. Yin Feng and the other 2 seemed to have a cultivation of the martial highness realm. They would definitely enter the trial too. They had a good idea. Now that they had recruited Lu Ming and the others, when they entered the great emperor mystic realm, they could make use of them to gain benefits for themselves. This was something that the crowd present could easily figure out with just a little thought. I'm sorry, but I'm used to being alone. I have no intention of becoming someone's subordinate. Goodbye. A bald young man said coldly, before heading back to his cave. Whoosh! With a flicker, the young man who had spoken earlier appeared before the bald young man. Are you going to refuse? The native youth said coldly. I don't have the habit of being other people's dog. The bald youth sneered, implying that the other party was merely a dog of Yin Feng. You're courting death. The native youth's face turned gloomy and cold murderous intent was emitted. A lowly ant from a desolate island. It's already your fortune to be able to join the divine Dragon Valley. You don't know how to be grateful, and you dare to be arrogant in front of me, Yin Fei Zhang. It seems that if I don't teach you a lesson, you will forget who you are. The native youth was called Yin Fei Zhang, and he emitted a powerful aura. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The bald young man also emitted his aura, which was also at the martial highness realm. These youths were all peak existences in their respective continents. They were invincible among their peers, and they looked down on others. All of them were proud and arrogant. How could they be willing to become someone's subordinate? Similarly, Yin Fei Zhang's cultivation was also at the martial highness realm. Why would he be afraid of someone of the same level? Hee. Then I'll let you know how weak you desolate island trash are. Attack, I'll give you 3 moves. Yin Fei Zhang said coldly. Why do I need you to give me a handicap? I'll defeat you in 10 moves. the bald young man shouted. He was also a proud person. Wang. A yellow halo emitted from the bald young man's body. It was the embryonic form of his domain. The embryonic form of his domain shrouded Yin Fei Zhang. Insignificant skill. Since you're overestimating yourself, I'll fulfill your wish. Yin Fei Zhang took a step forward, and the embryonic form of his domain also emitted from his body. The two embryonic forms of their domains met in the air. But an unexpected scene occurred. The moment the two embryonic forms of their domains met, the bald young man's embryonic form of his domain instantly collapsed. The bald young man's face changed, and he took a few steps back. Shua! At this moment, Yin Fei Zhang moved. In an instant, he appeared in front of the bald young man and sent a palm strike towards him. The bald young man's face turned grave. He exhaled and sent out a palm strike. Bam! When the two palms met, the bald young man's face changed. His body was pushed back, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. How could this be? The bald young man looked at Yin Fei Zhang in disbelief. They were both at the martial highness realm, but he couldn't even withstand one move, and was defeated. How was this possible? His self-confidence had suffered a severe blow. Many of the other youths were shocked. It wasn't that the bald young man wasn't strong, but Yin Fei Zhang was too strong. Domain martial technique. Lu Ming said a few words. He possessed part of Nine Dragons' memories, and his knowledge was extraordinary. He could tell at a glance that Yin Fei Zhang had used a domain martial technique. A domain martial technique could unleash the full power of a domain. Furthermore, a domain martial technique was very precious. Even in the major sects of Yuanlu, not everyone could cultivate it. Intent realm martial techniques existed in some small continents, but it was impossible for those small continents to have domain martial techniques. Just now, Yin Fei Zhang had used a domain martial technique to defeat the bald young man. Now do you know how much of a trash you are? Do you really think you're an elite? Let me tell you, the reason why Dragon God Valley gathered you here is not because of how strong you are, but because your cultivation is too weak. In the Divine Dragon Valley, there are many geniuses who are already martial monarchs. They cannot enter the Great Emperor's mystic realm. There are too few people below martial monarchs. That is why they came to your remote villages to gather you here. Yin Fei Zhang said coldly. Many people were shocked. Dragon God Valley had recruited them as disciples not because of how strong they were or how talented they were, but because Dragon God Valley didn't have that many geniuses with weak cultivation. This was a great insult to the top geniuses of the various continents, especially the bald young man. His face was ashen. If any of you don't agree, I don't mind crippling him or throwing him out. Anyway, you aren't the only disciples recruited from overseas. It won't hurt to cripple a few of you. Chapter 1403. Everyone's expression made Silver Flying Zhang's cold expression even more arrogant. He scanned the crowd and spoke again. If there's anyone else among you that would like to have a taste of my strength, feel free to step forward. I'll let you know how useless you are. Everyone looked at each other, and no one stepped out. Silver Flying Zhang was too strong, and no one had the confidence to win. Let me learn from you. A moment later, a young man in a yellow robe stepped forward. Good. You have guts. Then I will teach you a lesson. Silver Flying Zhang looked at the youth in the yellow robe, and a sharp cold light flashed. The crowd retreated and made a large space. Silver Flying Zhang and the youth in the yellow robe stood opposite each other. Roar! The youth in the yellow robe didn't hide his strength. A dragon roar resounded throughout the valley, and a yellow dragon appeared above his head. 9 golden chakras shone. This was the youth's bloodline. The youth in the yellow robe directly used bloodline fusion. Wang. Then a mountain peak appeared above the yellow dragon's head and emitted a strong pressure. An emperor-rank spiritual weapon. Hehe, so it's an emperor-rank spiritual weapon. Do you think it's useful just because you have an emperor-rank spiritual weapon? How naive. Silver Flying Zhang sneered. Swish. Then, his figure flashed and emitted a green radiance as he pounced towards the yellow dragon. Roar. The yellow dragon let out a dragon roar, and its dragon claws stepped on the air as it pounced towards Silver Flying Zhang. At the same time, the The mountain peak enlarged rapidly and suppressed Silver Flying Zhang. Swish! 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 Yin Feizhang's figure flickered. His figures suddenly multiplied into 18. Each figure waved their hand, and a green chain flew towards the yellow dragon. The 18 chains were extremely fast. In an instant, they wrapped around the yellow dragon's body, binding it tightly. Roar! The yellow dragon struggled with all its might, and roared continuously. However, the green chain was indestructible and couldn't break free. Suppress! The yellow dragon roared, and used the mountain-shaped emperor rank spiritual weapon to suppress Silver Flying Zhang. Sky Wind Divine Technique. Silver Flying Zhang sneered as his green domain spread out, and turned into a huge palm print that blasted towards the mountain peak. Dong! A thunderous explosion rang out. The cyan palm imprint was destroyed, but the mountain peak was also sent flying back. The emperor-ranked spirit weapon was sent flying by Silver Flying Zhang's bare hands. What a powerful domain martial technique! Lu Ming, who was in the crowd, could clearly see that the Silver Flying Octopus had been using a domain martial technique since the beginning. It was a type of domain martial technique that had a myriad of transformations. It brought out the power of the Silver Flying Octopus's wind domain to the extreme. It was extremely mysterious, and its power was shocking. When the yellow-robed youth used bloodline fusion and combined it with the Emperor Spirit weapon, his battle prowess was definitely strong. In the continent of godly ruins, the yellow-robed young man would be able to defeat a martial emperor. He might even be slightly stronger than a first-layer martial emperor. However, he was still no match for Silver Flying Zhang, which showed how strong Silver Flying Zhang was. Then, Silver Flying Zhang's body flashed and appeared on top of the dragon's head. He slammed his palm down on the dragon's head. Roar! The earthen yellow true dragon let out a wail before exploding, revealing the yellow-robed young man's body. Silver Flying Zhang stepped on the yellow-robed young man's face, causing the yellow-robed young man to crash into the ground, creating a large crater. You want to go against me with such weak battle prowess? You're courting death. Silver Flying Zhang snorted coldly as he exerted force on the yellow-robed young man's face. The yellow-robed young man screamed miserably as he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Many people were indignant. On the side, Yin Feng and another young man looked on coldly, as if they were looking at Silver Flying Zhang stepping on a chick. Is there anyone else who wants to fight with me? Come out. Silver Flying Zhang said loudly. No one said anything. Since no one said anything, I'll take it that you've agreed to side with young Master Yin Feng. Alright, let's sign the blood oath contract now. A scroll appeared in Silver Flying Zhang's hand. When he opened it, it was filled with inscriptions. What? You want us to sign the blood oath contract? No, we can't sign the blood oath contract. If we sign the blood oath contract, we'll really become your slaves and be controlled by you. Instantly, the scene was in an uproar as many people shouted. The blood oath contract was unique to Yuan continent. Once it was signed, it was equivalent to swearing a blood oath, and it couldn't be violated. In that case, wouldn't they have to be controlled by Yin Feng for the rest of their lives? How could these proud and ambitious sky prides, who came from different continents, accept this? What's with the noise? Let me tell you, you have to sign it today even if you don't want to. Moreover, this blood oath contract isn't for life. It's only limited to the exploration phase of the secret territory. Do you understand? Silver Flying Zhang spoke, but the crowd was still angry and no one would sign it. What a bunch of idiots. Silver Flying Zhang started to lose his patience as he berated. Do you think you're sky prides? Let me tell you, in Yuan continent you're nothing. You're just a bunch of trash. If you don't side with young Master Yin Feng, I guarantee that you won't have a good life in the future. Yuan continent is filled with danger and ferocious beasts. I guarantee that you won't even know how you died. If young Master Yin Feng protects you, you'll have a good cultivation environment. This was a blatant threat. However, these words were indeed powerful and made many young men hesitate. That's right. Yuan continent was filled with experts. While there were opportunities, the danger level was also extremely high. They couldn't stay in Dragon God Valley and cultivate for the rest of their lives. They needed to go out and train. If Yin Feng did something to them, they would be in danger. Moreover, in a large sect like Dragon God Valley, it was indeed better to have a backer than to cultivate alone. Some young men started to be tempted. Alright, I'll sign it. Me too. Finally, someone spoke and agreed to sign the blood oath contract. A smile appeared on Silver Flying Zhang's face as he said, "That's more like it. Come up and sign it." More than 10 young men walked up and signed their names on the blood oath contract with their own blood. The young man in the yellow robe at Silver Flying Zhang's feet also signed the contract obediently. What about you guys? Silver Flying Zhang held the blood oath contract and walked to the front of the young women. He looked at them coldly. The young women's expressions changed. In the end, they clenched their teeth and signed the contract. You guys? Then Silver Flying Zhang held the contract and looked at the others. People had to lower their heads when they were under someone else's roof. Those few people also clenched their teeth and signed the contract. Soon about 50 people signed the blood oath contract. We won't sign it. All of a sudden, a deep voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that the one who spoke was an honest young man. Beside him, there were 2 people who looked exactly the same as this young man. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.